to the county board meeting this morning. I'll call the meeting to order. Let's see, we start with agenda approval. There are a couple of changes.
There are a couple. Mr. Chair, we are adding one item under solid waste. And where was the other item we were adding?
Under natural resource.
Under natural resources, yes, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to amend, to accept the amended agenda, approve the accepted agenda.
I'll second.
Okay.
With the agenda.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, has been amended. Public input, is there any? If not, close public input. And now we move to the consent agenda. Any item for discussion or polling for more consideration? If not, get a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. All right, we got employee recognition. And in the auditor treasurer, we have Virginia Peterson. And she's the finance coordinator, began her full-time position on May 8th, 2023. Welcome aboard. And in Parks and Recreation, we have Kelly Schlusser, Parks Maintenance Worker, began seasonal position May 9th. And then Sheriff Cecilia Larson, Jail Sergeant, is recognized for service from July 25, 2019 to May 15th, 2023. And then Marilyn Hawkinson, Dispatcher Jailer, began full-time position May 8th, 2023. In Social Services, Amanda Simler, Social Service Supervisor 1, Children's Services, is recognized for 10 years of service on May 6th of this year. And then we have Elizabeth P. Monte, Child Service Officer, is recognized for service from July 18th, 2012 to June 2nd, 2023. And we congratulate them. All right. Now we have information technology. Fred, your first time up.
Morning, yep.
Good morning.
The new guy.
Well, it's kind of a quick one, just to review and approve for our new backup and recovery servers. At current, we are pretty much maximum as far as room allowed to back up, for our backup and recovery. This here will replace it, and both servers will have a 5-year warranty on them, and it would, we've basically sized it so that it'll definitely, around that 5 years, hopefully. We're still plenty of storage ahead of that, but it should take us into the future, where we need to be. In 5 years, we can look at addressing that again, and it's for the amount of $27,800.
Don't we use bite speed for other?
We do. So this is a budgeted item and a planned replacement, and Bytespeed is on the state bid contract. That's why there's only one quote here, because when we purchase from them, we're purchasing at negotiated prices already.
That was going to be my question about the one quote, so thank you. I'll make a motion to accept.
Okay.
I'll second. When you do fill out the agenda item reports, if it is a budgeted item, just mention that somewhere in there too.
Okay, perfect, yeah. And then also, if it's unlike the state contract where it's already been approved, put that in there too. Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? Not, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Highway Department.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jed and Jeff.
Few things for you today. First one, we got approved application for carbon reduction program funding. The application that we discussed last week at the work session for the carbon reduction, I guess what I would like to move forward is putting an app in for a couple of those areas for that structural snow fence. The one area be on CASA 4, up where the cattle pass comes across, and the other one would be down on the large corner of our truck route on CASA 28. And so this would also include getting those designed for that area, depending on how far off the road they need to be, how high they need to be, and if there's any additional right-of-way that we would have to seek for placing these if they have to be out that far. So the application I'm looking at is a total of about $100,000 that would have a local match of $20,000 for the 20%.
Any more discussion? Okay. Second. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
And review and approve final payment for project SAP 029-600-015. This is our State Park Road Account project that's been hanging out there for a few years in the city of LaPorte. We did that little Central Avenue right by the trailhead project there. We got it paved to, they had maintenance issues, water running off of the trunk highway, so we were able to get State Park Road funding for it. And we finally got to the point where we got all of our final paperwork. So I would ask for the approval to make final payment of $837.40 to Ryerson Construction.
Well, that's a big,
A big payment?
oh, yeah, yeah.
No, so this one, being it's been hanging out there for a few years,
Oh,
we pay them down to a very small retainage,
Oh,
just
okay.
waiting on, we had one deduct that we ended up utilizing by spec for, there was some issues with the surface quality of it. We looked at some different options, possibly having the entire area seal coated or possibly chip sealed, but we couldn't get quotes on the project, and so we just ended up using the deduct for surface deformation. Yeah, so that just left a little bit left to be paid.
Okay. We have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Passes.
And we've got review and approve quotes for construction of a new Public Works Department sign. This is a budgeted item, and full disclosure, we did not budget this amount. We only budgeted $5,000, not having an idea of what these signs costed. And so, we did have somebody work on this with a couple companies. We ended up getting a couple quotes for essentially the same sign, and,
They were just a titch bit different. Which one were you gonna go with?
well, I think we should go with the low one, with the
Okay.
prepayment, and that also includes the permit.
I'm sorry, I was just
Oh,
looking
I
at
see, the pictures.
The pictures,
Sure.
and so did you have a preference of which design you liked?
Yes, we would prefer the top left with the Hubbard County logo
Okay.
on it. I discussed with Administrator Cadwell about utilizing that, and we like the looks of that one a little bit better. And then I think with the whole branding deal,
Mm-hmm.
then you see that logo, and I think it draws it to Hubbard County, so we like that one.
Good idea.
It's a nice sign.
Yeah, we thought it was very nice, and so they were bidding apples to apples, and so that'd be my recommendation, go with Ross Lewis Sign Company, and they're a little bit lower. It does include a prepayment, which is a little different for us. We typically don't pay until it's all done and accepted, but for 2%, I guess, if that was allowed, I would, that'd be my recommendation.
I'll move to go with the low quote.
I'll second.
Second. Any more discussion?
Just that, you're gonna put it where it's shown on the.
Yeah, you see how it's out just kind of right by
Yeah,
the
I like
sidewalk there,
that.
so it'll be two-sided, so you'll see it coming from both directions.
Yep.
And this would replace, I think you can kind of see on the one picture, if you're familiar with the one that we've got there, it's old, faded, tough to read, even if you pull right up to it, so there's nothing you could see from the sign, or from the roadway, I should say. And so we do have the blue sign out there, but this would just be a much nicer deal. It'll match the rock on the building, and yeah, we liked how it got designed.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? You got your sign.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, that's the sign, yeah. And Jeff will give a project update.
Absolutely. Yes. On our annual maintenance road contracts, county graveling in the northern half of the county, and then the countywide calcium chloride Both those projects, we anticipate them getting going underway following the lifting of spring road restrictions, which is currently set on the 24th. So shortly after that, we expect to see some activity taking place. We have a project up on our County Road 9 with Hawkinson Construction, and currently that's set to get going mid to late July. And that's our County Road 9 from the Clearwater County line all the way to Besida. Pavement reclamation and resurfacing project that we've all looked at before in Akeley on our County Road 49, Grayson Avenue, some storm sewer and pavement repair on the south end of town. That's contracted out to Gladen Construction, and they're anticipating getting going approximately the 26th of June, and that project's set to have a July 28th completion date, and we're working that so it's between the phases of the detour on the Trunk Highway 34 project, because Grayson will also be used as a detour for the state later on in that MnDOT project timeframe. So our County Road 119 and 82 projects that were let last year, and the grading work was completed. Currently, Knife River Materials is working on milling, and they'll start pavement reclamation, and they anticipate that the paving will get going next week, and that contract is also tied with a couple township projects, Todd Township and Nevis Township there, 174th and Albert Avenues. Consequently, all the paving should be wrapped up along with the other pavement marking and whatnot by the 9th of June. That's their anticipated schedule, but we should see the paving relatively completed around 1st, 2nd of June. At least that part of it will be done on 82, 119, and the township roads, so. And then there's some township LRIP projects. Henrietta Township's project on 204th Street with their contractors, Northern Paving, that's set to get going approximately the 12th of June, and their schedule is to have that done and wrapped up essentially before the 4th of July, but it does have a September 1st completion date on it. And then currently, Gladen Construction is working on Ergo Township's project on 230th and 141st Avenue. Pavement reclamation, some grading, and that project is currently underway. They started this week with their excavation, and they anticipate that project being completed in 8 weeks after it gets started. So that's about it, unless there's anything else, Jed, that you
No, that's it. You touched on road restrictions there on the 24th, so get a lot of calls this time of year for those, but, so it's good to make it public. 24th. That's it, unless you got anything else?
Thank you.
Good, thanks.
All right, next item is extension. Lisa?
She's planning on 10 o'clock,
10 o'clock.
so we'll have
Okay.
to come back to her.
Okay, 10 o'clock. So we'll move on to natural resource. Are you handling that?
Nope. Come on up.
Oh, okay.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the commissioners?
I'm Jake Kiernan. I'm a natural resource manager. I'm sure I've met some of you before. So we have a phase 1 archaeological survey that needs to be done on a timber sale in Lake Alice Township. It was recommended that we do a phase 1A initially, but after contacting some of the archaeological contractors, they recommended just going with an actual phase 1 because the topography, it's got a big landscape with a big overlook, and so they just assumed that to make the time frame shorter of the project, just to do the full phase 1 where they'll actually go out, dig, and report if they find anything. We got one bid, and I can't remember the price, but it was the lowest, obviously. So, yeah, that's pretty much the scope of what I know.
So this is just standard business as usual, and Jake is standing in until Corey's here next week as the new land commissioner. So I just asked him to put this together. Honestly, I could represent this because it's just administrative work that we have to do, but I thought it'd be good for Jake to come and meet you guys and
So,
get to see someone else from that office.
I do, oh, go ahead.
Jake, do you know how these come about, where it's a survey is required?
Yeah, so, when we're in the process of setting up a timber sale, there's an online website that is put up by the state, by, SHPO, the State Historical, I can't remember what the PO stands for, but they have areas of interest gathered from, different, sources or whatever, and, we submit a review to the state, and if they say, yeah, that particular spot that you're cutting, we have a reason to believe there might be something there, they contact us and say, you need to get a phase 1 or a phase 1A, depending on how significant that interest is.
Thank you.
So my question was, so the 6,500 without curation or the 8,200, that's determined after they do this survey, correct?
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure what the curation process is, but I'm assuming if they actually find stuff, they might have to curate it,
Yeah.
and that's what that added cost would be.
State Historic Preservation Office.
There it is. Yeah, we always just call it SHPO, so.
And curation is if and only if they find something.
Will this have to be duplicated again in the next rotation, or is
I
this
wouldn't think
finished?
so. I would assume that when they do it and they say, we either found something or we didn't, further down the road, they probably wouldn't have to do it again.
Not on the same site.
Yeah, not on the same site, but that'd probably be another 70, 80, 90 years from now.
I think since I've been on the board, we've only approved one or two others.
Yeah, we've had one where they actually went out and dug, that was on County Road 118 by Frontenac Lake, and they actually did find
Oh, did they?
some stuff. Yeah, it was pretty interesting to read.
In this case, better to know ahead of time before you schedule the timber sale than to find out later.
Yeah,
So,
I'll move to approve.
okay, and I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any more discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes, and I believe there's another one on the agenda for you.
There
Duke
is,
Lake
and-
Park
and-
Grant?
Jake doesn't have anything to do with this one. I'm just kind of carrying this over. And this is to keep the ball moving on the Deep Lake Park project. I asked Stuart from SRF Consulting to put together a proposal to complete our grant application for the 25 cycle of Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails funding. So they put that proposal together, and their proposal to do that on our behalf is 18,893. That includes everything we need to do and the submission of the grant application. I think the grant application is due July 31st, so I didn't want to push this back into June and tell them to start. But if you'll remember, the phase 1 is road demolition, extension of utilities, and some other, basic items to prepare that site for us to start working. Fiscal year '25 means these funds are effective July 1st of next year through June 30th of '25. So it's timely to get this application in, and hopefully we get funding for it. We might not in the first year. But anyway, the continuing partnership with SRF, I think, is probably the most efficient way for us to proceed with working this master plan. The other element of this relative to the demolition of the existing buildings is not something that's in their wheelhouse and something we'll probably carry ourselves. I had a conversation with Jed about some people who are capable of doing that in the area or regionally, and we'll probably put together a quick RFP for that as soon as Corey gets here and do the demolition, coordinate the demolition ourselves while we're doing the application for the rest of this funding through SRF.
I've had a couple people call me and ask when they're gonna be able to get into the park. I'm assuming it would be maybe after phase 1 is completed?
It'll be after the buildings are demolished and/or secured in a way that we know that they're not a public safety hazard, so.
That's what I've been kinda
Yep.
saying, is the liability and
I
stuff.
would love to have it open for this fall. We will take that fence down as soon as it is safe for people to be out there, and we can sign it. We did add the signage to the phase 1 as well, so that we can, no motorized use north of the road, right, primarily. So the biggest thing would be when we can get a reasonable number to demolish the existing buildings and deal with any hazardous materials that are there. I don't have the inventory in front of me, but I believe that there are some things to be concerned about when we're doing that. And anybody that's been out in that facility knows we don't want the public walking through there right now. So our goal would be to open it as soon as we can eliminate those hazards. And it would be just for everything, anything else that we have for other county land. If they want to go take a hike around the lake, they'd be welcome to. If they wanted to throw a canoe in the lake, they'd be welcome to do that as well. So our goal is to get that done as soon as possible, and when Corey gets here, we'll work on trying to find a contractor for the initial demolition.
But realistically, we're probably looking at next year.
I will have a mind to get the demolition done this year, and we'll just find out if the contractors have time in their schedule.
Would that demolition include an amphitheater, the concrete? in there?
I'm anticipating that we would do the RFP in 2 phases. One would be the buildings that need to come down, and 2 would be the amphitheater. And I'm only looking at getting a price for 1 and 2, because we have so much allocated this year for the demolition for the cost of this. And if we can get them both done and they have the time, we'd do it all. If we can only do the buildings, I think the amphitheater itself is less of an actual hazard because you can't get inside of it. So my plan would be to RFP those as phase 1 and phase 2 of the demolition.
Great. Will you be working with the Historical Society as far as removing things inside the building prior to demo?
We would like to, although as I understand, people have already helped themselves to a lot of things. So we'll do what we can. I'll try to arrange a meeting to go out there and take a look and see if there's anything they're interested or concerned with.
When I toured the property, I noticed some of the trails are starting to get a little bit grown over. So when the gates do get open, it'd be nice to, if you can get a bush mower in there and maybe just do a little trimming to make it feel better to walk around.
Chip had a plan and staked out the primary loop around the lake, and there is some amount of logging that needs to happen in addition to just brushing to make that preliminary path. So we're going to try to accommodate that as well. And I don't know if that's going to be in the form of a limited logging contract or if we're just going to find a contractor that has the capacity to do that for us. But because we only want that thing to be 12 or 15 feet wide, it's going to be hard to find somebody with the equipment that wants to do a 3-mile out and back loop, right? So that's also in the plan, is to identify a way to brush out that first trail.
Yeah, so when the gates are open, it'd be nice to at least have, good accessibility like that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're just gonna wander.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and that's laying on Chip's desk for us to pick up. I had that conversation with him before he left.
Okay.
So hopefully, we can do our part to make it safe and get it open, and Stuart can do his part to write that grant application, since he's the most familiar with the master plan and has had conversation with Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails. Joe, I don't know how to pronounce Joe's last name. There's a lot of P's and Z's, and I can't pronounce it, but I've had conversations with him as well. But Stuart's in the best position to represent us on that application.
Okay, you need a approval of a resolution now.
Yeah, if we would just approve the contract with SRF, then what he's planning on doing is being here next Monday at the Parks meeting and talk about the application and provide an update on everything we just talked about now. Corey Kimball will also be here on Monday starting, and we're going to have him start late so he can go to the Parks meeting tomorrow, Monday night. So he'll be there to meet the group Monday night. I'll be there with him.
Okay, good. All right,
Also move to approve.
all right. I'll second. Oops. Go ahead. I gotta get one in.
Definitely.
All right, any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that's approved.
Thank you.
All right. And now, solid waste.
Good morning.
Morning, Josh.
All right, so the first item I have for you this morning is to review and approve auction list. We have some surplus equipment to auction at the solid waste department. Typically, we auction this utilizing K-bid, and that would be my recommendation again. We're looking at auctioning a 2002 Cat backhoe, which we replaced over this last year, and then a 1999 Ford F-250 that is seen the end of its usable life. So, and then we have some our old style mixed recycling barrels. We have quite a selection of them. We're just gonna see if we can lot out and get rid of. So.
I'll make a motion to approve the list.
Second.
Second. Any more discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Passes.
All right, second item I have is we're looking at purchasing some additional recycling dumpsters to replace some of our ones that are kind of beyond being replaced, and also we keep adding recycling customers every so often, so we need to have some additional dumpsters in our fleet. So we're looking at purchasing 6 8-yard dumpsters, 4 4-yard dumpsters. We received 2 quotes for the project, with a low quote being from Waste Quip of Rosemont, Minnesota. And this, we did have budgeted to do dumpster replacement for 2023, so.
Surprising to see such a difference in the quotes.
Yeah, Waste Quip's a very large company, and that's where we've been getting most of our actual recycling dumpsters from. So I think it kind of also, they have a sale going on right now on some of that, but, and honestly, a lot of this, I was surprised to see the prices that low as well, so, kind of pleasantly surprised with that. I mean, container prices have been going, steel prices have been going up like crazy, so.
How much is in the budget for it?
With all of my different containers, I had budgeted 40,000, I believe, so we're right about at that amount now with the ones I purchased already so far this year, so.
Do you foresee any more coming up?
I think this should get us through this year. It's kind of gonna be a standard capital plan, to,
For each year for?
for
the same
replacing
number?
certain amounts of
Okay.
containers, so.
Move to approve the low quote.
I'll second.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes.
Right, and the additional item that was added this morning, so we're getting close to wrapping up our regional construction and demolition landfill study. We're scheduled to complete that next week, and there's, again, 9 counties that are involved in this process. And we're planning to seek a CAP grant, from the Capital Assistance Program, from the MPCA that they sponsor, for our region to potentially construct a hub and spoke system for our region. And we're kind of up against a deadline where the MPCA is seeking letters of interest from local government units for future funding requests with the deadline of May 30th. And this would be able to get us on the bonding tour that the legislature would do and get on the 24 and 25 legislative sessions. So with the hub and spoke concept, there would be an eastern hub and a western hub where there would be a line facility. With the eastern hub potentially being in Hubbard County, we are recommending that Hubbard County be the project lead to submit a letter of interest to the MPCA for funding. And with the deadline fast approaching, we're looking to act quickly to get this letter of interest submitted as a placeholder for our group. We do realize there's a lot more information and detail that is needed for all 9 counties involved, and that'll be coming in the weeks and months to come. So our county, Hubbard County, finding out through the study, we generate the most C&D material in our group with both our landfills combined. And it is appearing that, again, our north site would be the ideal location for the future lined landfill expansion. There is still a lot of information needed before we'd expect any firm commitments financially to move forward with this type of facility. Some other points, I guess we've already applied for that federal Swiffer grant that would assist with this project. That was a $4 million grant. We haven't heard on that request, and there'll be an ongoing possible grant for the next several years from the federal. And then really, tipping fee costs and waste commitments would be needed wherever the facility is located to help cover operating costs and bond payments in the future. With a facility, if it is located in Hubbard County, it's really would be the ideal way to keep our transportation costs low and provide the overall lowest cost to our residents. And with both of our current landfills, again, I've mentioned before, by 2030, we're going to be out of capacity at our landfills and are going to be faced with either constructing a new facility on our own or trying to be part of a larger regional project or solution where we can bring in additional material and help spread them costs over a greater waste shed. And by being the lead for this CAP program, we can have the best chance of offsetting our costs with state funding and keeping our operating costs as low as possible. So I guess again, just, this is again just a placeholder to get this letter of interest submitted. We're not on the hook or bound by this letter of interest, and our group strongly believes that it is in our best interest to be the first regional group through the gate to request state funding for this future hub and spoke system. And we also have a really good chance to be the model for the state, which other regions will follow. So
Could you tell me what kind of garbage is C&D?
So it's construction and demolition waste. So anything that we currently are putting, in the ground at our current landfills. So it's clean lumber, sheetrock, pretty much anything that you'd tear down from your building that isn't attached to the walls or inside it. So.
Does that have any like PFAS hazards that you would know about?
Well, with the lined facility, if in the concept this would be a lined facility, so you'd be mitigating the being able to collect any leachate that could possibly have PFAS in it, and then there'd be we'd have to look at a treatment solution for that. So.
And is the site a suitable one for it, or in the future they won't run into getting it leaching in the wells, kind of like the one over here?
With the liner, there shouldn't be any concerns over any groundwater leaching at all. So
with the liner, does it decompose at all, or does it just stay in the state it's in?
I think it doesn't decompose much. I mean, it happens over, probably hundreds of years. So
of the 9 counties, is the site that you have proposed in Hubbard County looks like one of the best spots for it? Or?
So under our system, we'd break up into a western site and an eastern site. The western site would more than likely be at the Polk County landfill, since they already have a demolition landfill there that is actually over the top of their existing, or over the top of a previously closed MSW landfill, so it already meets a lot of the liner requirements. And then, the eastern half, our site, is appearing that it'd be the best location where we could possibly bring in Beltrami, Cass County, Clearwater County waste. With our current site at the North Landfill, we have 80 acres. We have another additional 80 acres right to the east of it for landfill purposes. We already have the facility there, the transfer station there with a lot of the infrastructure already in place and equipment already in place. So.
And there isn't really neighbors directly so much next door in the north transfer station.
Yeah, I mean, there's tax forfeit land, really in that entire section surrounding the landfill. So.
And of course, that's in Guthrie Township.
That would be my concern, is that make sure we don't have nearby neighbors, so we don't get that problem. In the future, they'll have that problem.
And the liner should take care of most of that, at least they have been in other landfills that are lined.
Okay.
And construction and demo is not the same as the rest of our waste, and that would still continue to be trucked through the incinerator, go off to the other the MSW landfills that are designated for that. So the C&D pile and demo is significantly less of a nuisance, and it is a pretty open space. Now, this is potentially a really big project, right? But we have to get in line to, relative to state funding and state bonding and/or legislation to do something. Right now, most of what we're proposing does not even fit these criteria. So a big portion of this project is to identify that the state's gonna have to come up with other sources of funding to make this work out. So this is largely a research paper at this point in time, but it's also a research paper that has an end result in mind, right? Our current C&D landfill permits run out
2029 and 2030.
so this is a near long-term plan. And when we know what this is, we'll have to include a portion of these costs there, because there will be costs for all the counties, right? If they have to close their demolition landfills and truck to another place, they're gonna need additional facilities. So whether we're a spoke or a hub, we're gonna have costs related to getting rid of C&D materials. If we're, as Josh said, if we're the hub, we're gonna have fewer transportation costs. But if we have to close the one in the south, which we're gonna have to do, and truck to the north, we're already gonna have some costs, right? But we will be in the best position to regulate those costs and identify what's passed on to taxpayers and what's passed on through rates for actual users, if we are the site. So there's a lot of engineering to be done, a lot of financial modeling to be done. His point in wanting to bring this forward is this is getting in line to have the conversation with the state first about this.
What kind of information do you have to provide in that cap form?
So we have, it's a pretty brief summary. You have to provide contact information, type of facility, kind of a broad initial project scope, and then, and details. And a lot of that we'd be utilizing our application for our study to put that together. And then an overall estimated project cost, which is honestly at this point gonna be hard to pinpoint. But we pretty much would do the best we can based on where we're at with that study right now, so.
Current cap grants fund at either 25, 50, or 75%, kind of based on need and based on the type of project. C&D is not necessarily one of the included project types, which is why we said we're gonna have to get this in line and recognize that. So in the very minimum, it's likely that the project will have at least a 25% match. And how that's spread out across 9 counties is to be determined, but there will be a financial component to this. If this is a $12 million project and there's 75% financing, there's $3 million left to split between 9 counties. So right now, the program doesn't support that. And this is our point is to get this out there and simply say, what did you say that if we had to fund this, our tipping fee would have to be $110 per yard if we had to cash flow it just based on use. And our current tipping fee is 10?
Our current tipping fee is 15.
15.
And I actually re-looked at some of them numbers yesterday evening, and, it really, without any state funding, a lined landfill like this would be looking at about between $75 and $80 a yard.
I imagine at least a third or a half of that is gonna be the cost to haul.
Yeah,
That's not, the
That's not
operational
including
costs
the
are not
hauling,
included in this.
yeah.
This is the project cost, this is not
That's just-
operational.
well, that's the operation, that includes the construction and the 10-year operational cost balanced over the estimated volumes, so. But it doesn't including, other counties or necessarily us hauling it up from our south to our north.
The problem, the bad part about construction debris is when you haul that, there's a lot of airspace. And volume being wasted as you truck that, unfortunately, because they're not gonna let you grind it, I'm sure. And
Well, that's gonna be actually a big portion of this, and part of what our study, the results are gonna show, is that there's gonna be additional needs that the state's gonna have to allow, permit, to make these facilities like, what we're proposing work. So I think grinding or shredding this material, or running it through like an auger compactor, for instance, like we do our recycling, to make sure wherever it's going to our hub, or if the hub's in Hubbard or wherever, we're maximizing every payload we can, so. And also pulling out, every reusable, recyclable material we can as well to preserve airspace, so.
We had a long conversation yesterday about the cost of this and came around to the fact that the deadline for this letter is coming up and the costs of this project are unknown and there's no financial commitment in what we're asking at this point. This is, like I said, just to get us in line to have a conversation with the state about what the funding would look like. And I do agree that if there's a suitable site in Hubbard and a suitable site in Beltrami, we'd rather be in charge of it than not in charge of it. So, if the group wants us to submit this letter on behalf of them, I think it's a good idea to do so.
And that waste is gonna have to go somewhere, especially when we're closing the south here in the near term.
Yeah, 2029 is not that far away when we're talking about the scope of this project.
And this might, in all reality, this is probably gonna be let's say we get everything submitted, get the cap grant in, this, with how legislative sessions go, especially with bonding bills, this would, more than likely be a 2 or 3 year process just to get funding too, so.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider. There's been discussion at MRC about what to do with it, that kind of waste. There's a number who are in favor of incinerating it, because scrubbers are much cleaner now than what they used to be. But with the state laws coming up with zero carbon emission, that might not be a possibility. And then you can if you incinerate, you can convert that into energy, produce electricity while you're at it. All kinds of things like that can be done.
Well, a portion of our project here too is, I think that once our study is finally finished, there's gonna be a lot of interesting things that we can possibly do as well. One of that's gonna be, separating out clean lumber, and looking at making, potentially having like an air burner type system where you can make like a biochar product, that you can, have as a soil amendment, or it's actually it sequesters carbon, and helps that way as well, so. I think there's a lot of interesting technology that person can look into, so.
The idea that everything's just gotta go into the ground, stay there forever is kind of old thinking, on my part. But, okay, yeah, so this is primarily just a letter of an intent to, okay, no commitments yet.
None yet. We need to finish the scope, but we need to get in line so we can have a conversation with the state.
Okay, do we have a motion to that effect?
I'll move to authorize the letter.
I'll second.
Second, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
All right, thank you. And yeah, in the next, possibly at the next meeting, or at least within the next couple meetings, I should have, maybe the next month's work session or something, we should have some good updates on our study too, so
Okay.
keep you guys in the loop.
I have one small suggestion for you, because I was at the landfill yesterday and I recycled small batteries, but I had to go to the other building. You know how you take care of nails, you just have that freezer sitting there where people dump their garbage? Is there any way that you could just have a small bucket for people to dump their batteries? Because I'm not sure people are gonna make the extra trip to the different. I pass that on to you, just do with it what you want.
All right, I'll keep it in mind. We'll discuss it, so.
Okay, I see Elisa's here, so we can back up and do the extension right now. Morning.
Morning.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm Lisa Logering. I am the Regional Director for Extension in the Northwest. And I have a request. I'm wondering if you guys would be willing to would partner with the Extension Office as well as the leaders, 4-H Leader Council Federation, to contribute to a position, a temporary position, a temporary position just that would start just before the fair, 2 weeks before the fair. And the reason I'm asking for it is Mary Jo Lohmeyer is our 4-H Extension educator. Mary Jo had a fall in November. She fell in the parking lot and broke her arm. And she had surgery again on yesterday because it didn't heal correctly. The fair is coming up on July 11th, and fair preparations are in full force right now. 2 weeks before the fair, it gets really crazy as far as just the physical aspects of it. And so we're looking for the ability to hire somebody in a very temporary capacity for 100 hours, beginning 2 weeks before the fair, at halftime for the first 2 weeks, then full-time during the week of the fair, and then 20 hours the week after the fair. So it's 4 weeks total. So we did look through our budget, looking to see if we could reallocate some funds within our extension budget. So we have a little bit. We have $695 we figured we could do. The 4-H Leader Council so that they could contribute. And then we're wondering if the county board would be willing to also contribute $600.
Did you have someone in mind that would be willing to do this?
Mary Jo I don't know if she has any one particular person in mind, but
Because hopefully you can find someone that'll,
correct,
yeah.
yes.
Be like a summer job for somebody. 4
Yeah.
weeks is almost kind of half the summer, maybe.
Mhm.
I think it's a one-time situation that came up that, you know, it'd be tough to function without some help.
And David's suggestion during the meeting, which was a good one, of the extension meeting, was to see if there was, instead of just asking us for the whole amount, if there was any other sources that they could get some revenue from. And it looks like they did.
We did.
I think $600, I think, is a modest ask.
That it is, yep.
And I guess with that, I'm willing to make a motion to
Second that.
donate $600.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Next is social services.
Yeah,
Somebody
and
here for that?
I got a note from Brian that said this was intended to be on the consent agenda, that this is just a administrative amendment to the contract. They weren't planning on being here. It's just an amendment to the contract, it's administrative, it doesn't have any financial impact to the county.
Okay.
I'll move to approve. I remember when we had the discussion.
Yep, okay.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Second. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that's approved.
And I also understand Corey is on his way.
He's not just on his way, he looked right over there.
Look at that.
He snuck right in here.
You got perfect timing because you're up.
All right, I have a couple of things, is all. Requesting approval of a resolution we did this last time, and this was the purchase of the Trails vehicle from Forestry. We were quoted the wrong price from our lease company, and previously you approved the purchase at $12,618, but they modified that. So the current price is $14,602.79 for the purchase of a 2019 F-250 that's already with lights and markings on it, and we could use that on day one. So requesting a resolution to approve that.
I'll move to approve. There's money in bullets and water.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that passes.
All right, then requesting approval to purchase 2 vehicles to be used as patrol vehicles in the sheriff's office fleet. I think, as you know, we have not been able to get vehicles like we have in the past. I mean, last year we didn't get any vehicles at all because Ford simply didn't have any available to us. It's very unfortunate. And today, or this year, it looks to be the same. So we're kind of forced to buy off of dealer lots. But what we just found out this morning is that Enterprise looks like they can possibly purchase them instead of us having to purchase them, so then we would continue the lease. But this is something that I would like to get going today, so I would request approval of the purchase of them. And if TD, or if Enterprise is able to do it, they will simply purchase them and then we'll just lease them. But we got a couple of quotes. Our local dealer, Park Rapids Ford, as you can see, had the lowest quotes. One's a 2023 Ford pickup at $45,351. The other one's a 23 Ford Explorer SUV at $41,114. So I would request approval of the purchase from Park Rapids Ford, and with the hope that Enterprise ends up purchasing them, and then we just continue with the lease.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, any more discussion?
Well, it was just noted that, high mileage and repair bills.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Once you get
200,000.
It's been a couple of
200,000.
years since we've been able to get new stock.
Yes, it's terrible. I mean, we have vehicles, honestly, patrol vehicles that have 180,000 miles on them. And we're putting engines and transmissions into vehicles that we simply, we have no choice, and it's very unfortunate. So this is an important situation that we're in here, so.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None? Okay, that passes.
All right, that's the only other item I had, unless the board has any questions or anything. Very good, thank you.
And now we are at administrator.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, the first item is just catching us up on the Heritage Living Center financial statements. Going forward, you'll get these included in your monthly consent agenda with other financial reports. I just wanted to call them out that they're here. The format is tough to read.
It's really hard to read.
And that, yeah.
You can move it up, but I'm actually gonna ask Commissioner Christensen or Dale Hunt to talk about the fact that the financials have been improving over the last couple of months, and that's a good sign, but we wanted to document. So this is fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. So it's starting October 1st of 2021 through September 30th of 2022 is the first fiscal year, and then the partial fiscal year is starting in October 21st of 22 and going forward. These combined statements up here on the top that are really small are showing that whole history that we have. And there's a challenge with that format. There's another challenge with the format. Here's the format of the current statements. And when they're readable, they take 3 pages to show. So I'm trying to work on a better format, but I wanted to make sure that you had the information in hand, and that we just know that they'll be coming out. When they come out monthly, they'll be attached under consent agenda, just as financial statements with the rest of the county financial statements that you see.
If you can get them in, to where they're on like a standard paper that's 8.5 inch wide, that way we don't have to do that scrolling of that bar back and forth, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, there's a challenge. I can do it that way, or I can do it this way.
Is there any way you could just put them on an Excel spreadsheet?
Well, that might need
I-
scrolling though.
Yeah,
But you should be able then to fit,
so I can't put Excel spreadsheets in this format
okay,
because it does a very bad job of parsing that information. I have to put everything in either Word or PDF in order for it to show up on here. I can make them available to you in Excel.
well, don't go through a
Outside
bunch
of
of
the
extra
meeting.
work. This is how we actually get them at the board meetings. It's really hard to look at.
It's the back, up and down scrolling is not hard, you know, page to page, but it's when you gotta do the back and
Yeah.
forth along with it. That complicates it.
Yep, and I'm still working with them to get a format report that works well. I think that's been a challenge even at the board meetings.
Can the data populate just a very broad one-page summary
I would love to see a summary.
without the detail of all the
Yeah.
expenses? I mean, then you could probably get it on one page, and then if we want to see the detail under, I mean, you really just, in a summary, just need income, expense,
Yep.
EBITDA, you know, and a combined of all three for whatever period you're looking at, if you can populate the data into a new.
And I think we should ask Stephanie to provide it in that format for us because it's much easier.
Yeah.
It would be
And
much
that'd be a
easier
good
for
format for the Heritage Board.
For the Heritage Board to take a look
Yeah.
at. Here's the summary, and
Yeah.
then here's the detail if you want to go look at it.
Because I find myself now hunting and pecking and trying to get
Yep.
through there to get that broad overview. Because sometimes that looks good enough and that's all you need. If you need more, you can,
In the past 2 months.
Go digging.
The past 2 months have shown the positive bottom line trend, right? I mean, I would love to see a one-page financial. I'll work with Stephanie to see if we can do that, but I just wanted everybody to see what we had. You see the red numbers in the beginning, and you see them moving towards being black numbers in the most recent 2 months, which is essentially what you all need to know.
Dave, could you just touch on for the board why the trend is changing, what direction? And then because we give to EBITDA each month, could you just explain a little bit of that to the board?
yeah. Much of that is changing because, as you know, when the Heritage Campus Director came and with a very conservative budget, we really dug in hard and looked at the changes that needed to be made. Probably the biggest one being that contracted nursing pool. And much of that has been eliminated. It's basically virtually down to zero now. Right there is a huge amount of swing. And then, as you saw in that budget, we budgeted a lot more for marketing, which of course is going to have to be done going forward because it appears, according to latest news reports, our competition's expanding too. So we have to look at that, and then we have to start looking at, you know, what's our niche in certain areas gonna be, and how do we successfully market that. But the biggest thing is, there has been some growth in census in certain areas. The VA contract approval helps, but the biggest one is the nursing contracts being gone. And then some realignment inside that Stephanie's done a really good job of finding some savings in areas by just digging in and looking for efficiencies.
And the VA actually toured the facility, and they were very pleased with it.
Good.
And I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't, you know, thank the staff too for working with Stephanie in the way they have to find those efficiencies and be flexible and how they're doing things to make those efficiencies work.
And they're trying to recreate community there that was lost through COVID.
So far, you can start to see the trend is changing. We have positive cash flow the last 2 months. Last month was a little over 100,000 in EBITDA positive, so it's all trending in the right direction. Of course, we'd like to see that up around a couple hundred a month.
And then, do you want to touch on EBITDA? How the board would contribute and then
On what?
on EBITDA?
I did.
Okay, I was, because we give money every month to Heritage.
Oh, well, yeah, we gave the 1.4 million.
No, the operating month, it's not EBITDA, it's I forget what the program is that we subscribe to.
Oh, yeah, I'm confusing that
Yes.
with,
You're thinking
yeah.
the ECPN?
ECPN,
Okay.
thank you,
Yeah.
never mind. Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
That helps also. Yeah. That allows Heritage Living Center to have a higher rate than they normally would be able to get.
So I'll work on a better format for this. with Stephanie, and I think that will help everybody, but it is nice to see the last 3 months, the trend has turned around and showing black numbers at the end of at the bottom of the month for all 3 operations and for the total operation.
You know, what we really need, I mean, if you, in a perfect world, if you were gonna write in this completely as an enterprise fund and it was gonna support itself, we need a cash flow of 1.2, 1.4 million a year roughly.
Yeah.
But that's not to say if you're short of that, that it's still not worthy thing to be doing. But when you're way short of that, it's difficult.
So since the beginning of 2022, 17 nursing homes have closed in the state of Minnesota. So at some point, I would guess people are gonna have to look out of region, wherever that region is. I don't know where all the homes are that closed. But
Yeah.
Yeah, with some advertising, maybe we can get them up here.
yeah, well, that's what I'm wondering, if
Yeah.
some of the housing, because we can't seem to move beyond that 33 figure, and we could do 64 beds, eventually.
The scary part is if 17 have closed in the last 2 years, how many more in the next year? When does that number stabilize? Mhm.
Yeah, and then where do the elderly go for care?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the VA contract should help.
And even if you have room at the end to say, doesn't mean you can take them if you don't have the staffing. So that's the other side of it. You have all these facilities closing. They just can't go to some other nursing home and find a bed or a place. It's not that easy. You have to have the staffing to be able to take them.
Yes, because 2 people have actually been turned down in the last month because their needs were greater than the staff could handle.
But any issues? It looks like it flowed in pretty good. Like you got the financials in
Yeah,
there
we're
pretty good?
getting them, we have them. It's just a matter of finding a better way to report them
Yeah.
without, because right now, when I get them in the same format you do at the board meetings, and that's in a PDF format, which means that you can't scan a PDF and populate an Excel spreadsheet. It means manual entry, so I need to work with Stephanie on a better format.
Positive is it's in our system now.
No, it's not, this is not in our system. This is just copies of their reports.
Okay.
I've got the budget in a separate budget in our system, ready to do that. And I'm not gonna pull the trigger on that administrative time until we know what our situation is starting September 1st.
Okay, gotcha.
So these are just the reports you're getting at the board meeting, but the intent was to share them with the full county board so you understand the
You
impact.
guys can see them.
And like I said, going forward, they'll be just in the consent agenda as other financial reports.
Yeah, good.
And if you just do the overview, Dave and I can fill in on any of the details if there's something worthy mentioning, like at Prime West, we look closely at what changes every month or every quarter. So that'd be something we could provide in detail if there was a great change in a certain area.
If we have the financial reports and you report in the committee reports relative to that, that would make sense.
Yeah, revenue, expenses, and net profit, and
Yeah.
then occupancy are 3 big areas for me to look at. That didn't
And those
take
are-
up much space.
Right. That could
Those
be
are
done
all
on
in
a
here.
one-pager.
Those are all in here. This is the most summarized version that you currently get.
Get your HDMI cord out and hook it up to your 50-inch and you'll see the whole thing.
Yeah, I still have one. I have a nice big one.
So anyway, just knowing that we're catching up to make sure you have that information, things are trending in the right direction, and they'll be showing up monthly in the consent. I'm not sure, probably be in the first meeting for the month before. So in June, we have not seen we've not seen the April numbers yet, so the first meeting in June, you'll probably get the April numbers. There's more of a delay. Our county financials are about 10 or 15 days after the last of the month, and they're about 15 or 20, which means they'll be a month behind the financials that we get from the county. So when we get the May numbers next month for the countywide operations, you'll be getting April from Heritage.
Okay,
Next item is to set a date for the public hearing regarding the proposed tax abatement for the development of Pinecrest Apartments. So the, Ehlers has put together a schedule for us, and the city, the county, and the school district have all agreed in theory to an abatement program for the gap financing for this apartment project. I think the city already, they already set the date for their public hearing?
School board did last night.
The school board set the date for their public hearing last night. The city's going to set theirs next Tuesday. And all the public hearings are lined up to be in June relative to this. We'll have final numbers about that coming up real soon. And the development agreements, all of that is being developed. I can give you a copy of the schedule, but it basically just says that we need to hold the public hearing. We need to put a notice for each of the 3 public hearings in the paper. That notices have to be at least 10 days out, but not more than 30 days out before the public hearing. And again, the abatement is to capture the new tax capacity on the new construction. So we're not going back and grabbing any tax capacity on the existing parcel. We're just grabbing the value of the new construction and financing that, collecting that over 15 years to finance the gap on this project.
So we'd be looking at the first meeting in June?
We are proposing that the public hearing be June 20th at 9:30 in the boardroom.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to set that date and time.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Oh, I think we need a second.
Oh, yeah. I'll second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, June 20th, 9:30. And now we have another one to go and set.
And this one is to set the date for the required public hearing for the creation of the capital improvement plan. I do not have a date picked for that. But I do have the statutory requirement. This is just pulled from the capital improvement plan that we looked at, had conversations about. Statute 37340 means that before we can apply for any bonding for capital improvement, we have to have a capital improvement plan, right? Part of the reason for doing this is to have the eligibility to be able to bond for those projects as we need them later. But the first reason for this is to assist in financial planning, right? We have to have a long-term look at what our costs are gonna be in order to set operating budgets and capital budgets from year to year. So this serves 2 purposes, but for it to serve the second purpose, we have to walk through the public hearing process to make sure that people have an opportunity to comment. And I don't know when you would want to do that. I'd like to do it in June or early July, just so that we know that we have it there. My intention is to take that 5-year plan that we have at this point, add what we're finding from Josh relative to the solid waste planning. Now, that'll be in its own line, because that'll be enterprise funding, so that won't be under the current general obligation. That would be under enterprise funding, but we would still have to look at that relative to our capacity to issue debt, or our desire to issue debt, and the timing of that. The sources of funding to repay a debt in solid waste should be coming from the fees collected by solid waste, as opposed to the sources of funding for a proposed remodel of the jail would be coming from levy.
I would suggest we hold this in the evening sometime. I've had a few conversations with people already based on press reports and Saturday on it, so there may be significant interest in, to allow better participation. I think it'd be wise.
Mr. Chair, when I look at July, the first Tuesday is the 4th of July, and we had briefly discussed, I think in January, about not doing a work session, and so we would have a board meeting on the 11th and the 18th.
Mhm.
So if we do that, could we hold a hearing in the evening of the 11th? Oh, the 11th is the beginning of the fair? Oh, that's not a good week then. Is the 18th, is that later than you would wish, Jeff?
It honestly, it doesn't matter. Just to put it out there, the reason I didn't pick and set a time is I thought there would be some conversation about holding it in the evening.
I'll just have it on the 5th of July.
On Wednesday, and do the board meeting on the 5th?
The whole board meeting and everything, yeah.
And then do a work session on the 11th as normal?
Yeah,
Okay, that's an idea.
Yeah, and so you're suggesting that we hold the meeting on the 5th, which is one thing, but you're also proposing that we would have the public hearing in the evening on the 5th?
yeah, maybe we can do both that evening.
A board meeting late in the day and then a public hearing.
Or you could actually change the
Actually
time. You
both
could
in the
actually
evening.
you could actually change the time of the board meeting on that day too,
Yeah,
and
do
then
both
not
in
have
the
to come
evening.
back twice.
That's a good idea. And be something different, and we give the public even a chance to come to a board meeting, because most people,
On July 5th.
oh yeah, July 5th would be a terrible day, wouldn't it? Yeah,
It's just with the holiday midweek.
but the idea is good, it's just the wrong date.
Well, how about the 6th, Thursday?
You know, lots
My
of people
guess is
take that
people
whole
have,
week off.
you
yeah,
think
they're
the
gonna
whole
have a
week?
lot of
Oh.
family in town and
Yeah.
stuff. I don't think they wanna attend probably a county board meeting.
Yep,
If we're just gonna split it and we're talking about the time it takes to do it, we could have the meeting on the evening of the 20th of June and still do that. Or we could,
so
just-
are you proposing we would do the board meeting at the regular time and then, or
yes,
change?
we just schedule the public hearing for a special time,
Okay, okay,
like we did for the short-term rental
yep.
public hearing.
And when do I don't have that on my calendar. When is truth and taxation? Oh, tax evaluation, there we go, 12th and 13th. So it's the week before
The
that.
week before.
Yeah.
Setting in the evening is just the opportunity to allow more people to participate.
Actually, June might be better than July. July's a real vacation month.
So July 20th in the evening for,
June 20th?
June 20th, yeah. Still have the board meeting in the morning.
And then what time would be good for the public?
6 o'clock?
6 o'clock, I think, would be a,
All right.
So we're gonna get that out on here right now.
And then getting back to July, it'd be nice to decide today what we're gonna do.
Could have the board meeting on the 5th, like Tom was saying, and then
Okay.
that way we still have a work session.
That's fine with me. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Do we need a resolution for both of those, or just?
just need a motion to change the, to
Motion?
change the agenda, or change the schedule for July.
So moved.
Hold on, I can come back, okay. Got a second?
I'll second.
All right, any more discussion? Yeah, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All
And
right.
then, Mr. Chair, do we need a motion to set the public hearing for the CIP?
I believe so. Yep, can you
Okay,
have
I'll
a
move
motion?
to approve that on June 20th at 6 PM.
I'll
Yeah,
second.
Second, all right, any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes. If you can give me a moment to get this on my calendar, before it passes.
Not without going to the tape. So the motion, yes, the motion to
12th
change
and
the
13th.
July meeting schedule was made by Ted, seconded by Shar. And then the motion to set the date for the CIP public hearing on June 20th at 6 PM was made by Shar and seconded by Dave.
And then the tax evaluation for the 12th, at least to start in the 12th, is that at 6 PM?
Yes.
Okay.
We are taking a look at what we are getting for appeals, and we should know by the end of the week if we're gonna have to recommend that we start on the 12th and continue from that day, or if we need to plan a continuance.
Okay.
But we'll let you know as we're gathering that data. We have not gotten a lot of appeals yet, like we did last year, but I'm guessing they're still coming. So I would guess that there's a high probability we'll be continuing that meeting from the 12th. And I'm hoping that we can do it in fewer than 4 days like we did last year.
Okay. I was wondering about the next one, the closed session. Would you like to go and do that last while we
Yeah,
still have an audience?
Yeah, I think that possibly if you want to do your committee reports
Yeah.
and any other business that you have, and then we can close the session, then we can adjourn from there.
Yeah, I mean, they could always go back and look at tapes, but since we have a couple people here, maybe they
Yep.
want to hear that part first. All right, committee reports. Who would like to go first?
I guess I can start off.
Okay.
And I'll ask Shar, did we comment at all on the policy committee, personnel policy committee that we attended? Okay.
No,
I didn't think there was really much to report.
no, there wasn't much to report there.
Okay. And then I actually did not have any committees, but I will talk about, and I think I got the invite because I'm on the Transportation Alternative Committee, or TAC, we call it. It was held in Bemidji. Jed Nordine, our highway engineer, also attended this meeting. It was on alternative fuels corridor. And of course, they're talking about electric vehicles currently in Minnesota. 35W and I-94 are alternative fuel corridors. Basically, that is where will have charging stations at certain exits along the way so that people can take their electric vehicles and plug them in and stuff like that. It was a well-attended meeting. It was nice to have people there that actually had electric vehicles, and they talked about the difficulties that they have with them, the challenges and stuff like that. One gentleman talked about how he and his wife have electric vehicles, and it works out where they can charge them at home that evening, and then they don't have, hundreds of miles to go. But he said that's when the problem does come in. He tries, if he's got a conference or something that he has to go to, he tries to get a hotel that actually has a charging station, because otherwise he would have to obviously charge somewhere else and sleep somewhere else. But they also have issues sometimes where they have to get up in the middle of the night so that they can move their vehicle, so somebody else can charge their vehicle.
Ted, did he talk at all about how the battery is affected by the heating in the winter?
Yep, and he talked about that where they talk about up to 300 miles, but that's optimum, the driving range. That's, the battery fully charged, no headwinds, nice temperatures, like you say, if it's cold. So he said he has to factor all that in when he's planning his trips. One gentleman talked about how he and his wife went cross-country, and he said, yes, it was a challenge, but they were on vacation. So he said they got to go to different areas and stuff like that. Currently, less than half of 1% of the vehicles on our state highways are electric vehicles. And as I took notes, and do you think I brought them with? I can't find them. So this is from memory. The state legislature wants to have 20% of the vehicles on the road by 2030 or 2035. I thought it was some unrealistic number, because if you're looking at 0.5% right now, you want to increase that to 20% in the short term. There was a couple of gentlemen there from Beltrami Electric, and they talked about the capacity that they have currently. They could do what was kind of being suggested to this date, but they said if the vehicles get to be more and more, we don't currently have the capacity to charge them all. They have a Plug It map, or Plug It app, which they showed me. I was curious how many charging stations are in Hubbard County. There's one station in Park Rapids, and just north of Park Rapids, it didn't say what resort, but there's a resort that has a charging station, and these are public charging stations. Obviously, people probably at their homes and stuff have them. So that was kind of a nice app because it did, you know, if I had an electric vehicle, I'd want to have some app like that so I could see where I've got to go to charge. But they did talk about the issues where they're low on their battery, they pull up and there's 3 or 4 people sitting there and they've got to wait their turn. You know, so bring a book and be prepared, you might have to sit and wait and stuff like that. One gentleman talked about how he had to pay $500 to have his plug-in put in for his electric dryer. But he said basically the same plug-in cost him $2,500 for his electric vehicle. So he thought, you know, he said they looked an awful lot alike, they used the same wiring and stuff, but yet one was $2,500 and one was $500. They talked about different programs. I know Red Lake has got on some programs, but that's with the Department of Energy, and this was with the State Transportation, which are different grants. And I made the comment that it sounds like Red Lake will be having more charging stations than Hubbard County will here in the short term here. And they also talked about the difficulties and I included myself in that, low-income people. How are they ever gonna be able to afford an electric vehicle? You know, especially, they talked about the used market, but then the used market, there's not a lot of stuff that wears down in them except for the batteries and tires and, you know, brakes, stuff like that. But it was talked about that some vehicles that need to have the batteries replaced have gone as high as $23,000. So say you're, like myself, gonna buy a used electric vehicle and you don't know anything about them, you buy what you think is a good deal or what you can afford, and then a few months or a year or two later, whatever, the battery's shot, and now you've got to get another loan to get the battery replaced. And so it's kind of, I attended this because I wanted to have the information. As many of you probably know, I'm not really on board with electric vehicles. I think it's something that should happen organically, you know, not having the government say we have to do this and that, you know, but if there's the demand to have more electric vehicles, well, then the automakers should get on board and create more electric vehicles, stuff like that.
So Ted, because I thought of you as I read this article, a man had an electric pickup and it got in an accident. Somebody, I can't remember, but anyway, when it needed to be fixed, on a gas vehicle, it would have cost him $16,000, and on an electric vehicle, it cost $46,000 because of the batteries that needed to be replaced.
Okay, yeah.
And then he also said that having an electric vehicle, the tires have to be heavier, or they have to, the cars are heavier, the vehicles are heavier for the batteries, so the tires have to be able to handle the heaviness, so the tires are actually more expensive.
Yep. And then I think also, it's like a generator on board too, and it's, of course, getting its motion from the tires, so there is some resistance taking place. And that's, like I say, one of the people there he and his wife have a vehicle, they talk about brakes and tires, you know, are basically their expense right now.
And this man said his insurance company wouldn't cover the difference between the,
Now, currently, I haven't, in their shop where I work, we haven't seen any true totally electric vehicles. I know that there are challenges for new car dealers. The upfront costs of not only tools, charging stations and stuff like that, but also then sending their techs to training to see how to work on these electric vehicles and stuff like that. So there's all these hidden costs. And of course, like any business, you want to make a profit. And if the automakers and then all these upfront costs are demanding these extra dollars to get a handful of cars that will never make enough profit on it to pay for your upfront costs, I can see that as a challenge.
so California just passed a law, and I can't remember what year it is, but the semis are gonna have to be electric. And so did any of the people that were here talk about how they see this going for you know, for transportation for goods and services? Or as Corey was talking, I'm thinking, you know, how would you chase somebody in an electric car?
And that's one thing that, one of the guys with an electric vehicle talked about, you'd be surprised at the get up and go that it's got. But like you say, if you're a semi or something like that, of course, there's gonna be challenges there because the infrastructure isn't there, the truck stops to charge them, and plus the upfront costs.
And even going through the mountains with a load.
There's a lot of challenges that are gonna be coming forward. The more and more we see these, of course, the more and more challenges will come to light.
I believe that, you know, for early adoption, the place you would see it that actually makes sense is maybe each household that has 2 vehicles, one becomes an electric, just run around town kind of commuter for simple everyday needs, because if all you need to do is plug it in at night at home, and you've got more than enough charge and range to do what you need to do going to and from work, that probably makes some sense. But for the long hauls and winter driving, long distances and stuff, there's a lot of work to do on the infrastructure to ever make this work.
And they talked about if you have, like a lot of households have 100 amp service. So you would have the capacity to probably do a 6-watt system, which would work, like you say, for overnight. But if you say, like, have a Ford Lightning pickup, you would probably want to have the 19-watt. Well, then you would want to have 200 amp service. So if you don't currently have 200 amp service, now there's an added upgrade so that you could have an electric vehicle.
Just take a typical gas station in Park Rapids in July, and you're looking there, and they're running the pumps. Every pump is going just steady. Now imagine if you had to have level 3 charging stations instead of every one of those pumps. The electric demand on the electric infrastructure here, it's not possible, folks. Now without major investment in your because the instantaneous power that would be being pulled from that with all those chargers being used at the same time is a lot.
I just watched
A
a
lot more than
document.
a pump in the gas pump.
I just watched a documentary about why people are leaving California. And they talked about how air conditioning now is so expensive because there's not enough in the infrastructure to handle all the demands, that the lower income people can no longer afford air conditioning, even though they're allotted a certain time to run it. And so, yeah, especially when we're cutting down coal and nuclear plants.
Which will drive electric rates up, which,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not,
Because we all saw our electric bill even go up this year.
there's a lot of putting the cart before the horse right now.
And they
When
did,
it comes to this kind of thing.
and they did talk about the difference in, it was I believe it was a 200-mile trip in a Ford Lightning pickup. The cost, now then they talked about off-peak and not off-peak electricity costs. And they were talking about at roughly $3.50 a gallon, it would cost about $50 for that pickup, or for a pickup to go from spot A to, 200 miles. Now, with a charging station on off-peak, it was, there again in my notes, I believe it was around the $10, $15 mark. But if it was not, if it wasn't on peak or whatever you want to call it, when the electricity is more expensive, it was almost $50. So you weren't saving that much money charging your electric pickup compared to putting gas into a gas pickup.
And they're not taking into account the federal subsidies for buying it and then the replacement of the
And then that was
batteries.
brought up too about road tax.
Yeah.
Jed and the other county highway engineers that were there, how our roads are being fixed through the gas tax that we all pay when we buy gasoline. And there is some added costs when I believe they register their electric vehicles or the yearly tabs or whatever, so there is like a $75 charge or something like that. So that makes up for some of it. But yeah, more and more, if we're selling less and less gasoline and having less and less gasoline tax, how's that gonna affect?
And then they leave out the mining for the lithium and the cobalt and the other minerals
Yep.
Done by
Right.
slave labor.
done by slave labor. And then there's also disposing
Battery.
lithium batteries at the end of it.
That sounds very interesting. I actually wish I could have attended.
Yeah. And that's basically, like I said, I wish I had my notes, because there'd probably been a few more things I could add, but thank you for the questions, because then you brought some things to mind.
In many cases, it's not greener.
True.
Right, it's not making the
I
difference.
mean, when you add up all the inputs needed to produce the car, produce the energy, and all of that versus what it costs to produce gasoline and a 30-mile-per-gallon vehicle, I would venture to say anything over 35 miles per gallon is probably greener. Today, anyhow.
Yeah. And I guess that's all I got.
I guess I'll do it next. Let's see, well, one thing, I got a request from Tammy Hensel, and Jeff, I guess this is probably for you, at the Historic Society. She mentioned those 5 parking spots in front. Did she talk to you about that?
Yep.
Okay. It's for visitor, and it's being taken up by county employees right now. I wonder if we could add to that to make it enforceable, with a little sign that says 2-hour parking limit or something like that. That way, maybe tickets can be handed out.
We need to provide notice to the employees before we
Notice
start
first,
ticketing.
yeah. But then if it still doesn't work, then need to take it a step further,
Yep.
because they do need that parking from May to September.
Yep. We can't just change the signage. The road authority would have to change the signage, and then the sheriff can enforce.
Okay, and that's City Park Rapids?
City of Park Rapids.
Okay,
But we'll talk to the staff first.
okay, that'd be good. My next item, been a lot going on. I've had several meetings with Kitchigami Library, and we've been working on, the planning committee has been working on a collections policy, and let's try to make it fair as far as what collection material that the library holds, and also a method for appealing if you're not satisfied with what's there, or if you think there's a gap in the collection. And that appeal process will begin with the local library, and then it'll go on to the director in Pine River, and then if that doesn't satisfy you, then it'll end with the library board, which would have the final say on it, majority vote.
Did that pass at your board meeting?
Well, no,
you're-
we're still drafting it, and then
Okay.
we're gonna have the first reading Thursday.
Okay.
We'll have 2 readings, that means board members can have a chance to read it, digest it, see if they got any additions, so they don't just have a few days to consider it. So, and I've had several calls on someone who wants to add some materials, and it just hadn't been allowed in any of the libraries. And so now we're coming up with a process that you can go through, and the final say will be the board instead of the director or the local libraries.
That's good.
Yep. Okay, and then my last one is LAC, which would be the Mental Health Board. The only thing I got to add on that is that they have summer bus rates for kids. And if you are 13 to 18 years of age, you get 50% off. And if you're 12 and under, it's free ride for months of June, July, and August.
I'm gonna take a picture of that, okay?
Yeah.
I know someone that would like that information. Thank you.
And that's all I have.
Okay, let's see, at the Prime West meeting, the board voted to give, because of increased costs for, taking members off that have been on through COVID. The board voted to give each county, there was a formula that was broken down, and Hubbard County's gonna get like 55,000. I know Brian thought he wouldn't actually have to hire an extra person to go through the membership, but then I was gonna get in contact with Brian to see how they wanted to use the money. It's just a one-time, it's not something Prime West usually does. Action Park Rapids, I have a whole bunch of wonderful notes, and Ted, like you, they're at home, so I'm gonna report on that next time, because there's lots of things of interest you guys would enjoy. I went to the Mojave Poverty simulation last Wednesday. Oh my goodness, was that interesting. So I got there, and we were divided into families, so I was a mom, and then Marley Morrison was one of my children. She was 14, and then another woman who was a son that was 17. He had quit school, and he had gotten a girl pregnant. And so there was families all around, and then we were given a packet, and we had a month's worth of expenses and how we were gonna try to get through the month. So every 15 minutes was a week. So my packet, my husband had just left, and we had $12 to our name. So I was supposed to feed, pay rent, etc. So I didn't catch this because quite honestly, I was trying to figure out how to solve this. But Marley said it was really interesting, the parents of each family unit, how stressed we looked. And so I'm running around to different services, and the most frustrating thing was the transportation, because you had to pay for transportation every time you went. I got 5 transportation cards. Well, one of them, I sent my son to the employment place because he wasn't doing anything. He needs to get a job. My daughter was able to go to school for free. So every time I went somewhere, it cost 1 transportation. And then you could never be out of transportation cards, because if you did, they were $1 a piece, and it cost you $2, and I only had $12. So I started out at social services, who I got signed up for aid, and then I went next to, I think it was community service, I can't remember what it was, who gave me an EBITDA card. So that was for my groceries for $312 a month. I was really excited about that because my groceries were $105 each week. I got back to my chair and I had gotten a bad luck card, and someone had stole the EBITDA card. So for 2 weeks, my family went hungry. We had no money for that. I finally found services to cover the rent somewhere else, but that was by then, that was the second week. And I had to stand in line with everybody else, and by the time and then my son got paid, but by the time I actually got to the bank and stood in line to cash my check, the bank closed because other people were in front of me. So what I want you to get out of this is, I honestly didn't even think about looking for a job because I was too busy trying to find services just to get my family through the week. I found myself getting really angry and really frustrated at the system. And I said to several of the places I went, because they were represented by actual social workers or people that work for whatever, and I said to them, this system is designed to never get you out. And they agreed with me. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, when we all went through what happened, and so then there was kids that were stuck in juvenile. And every time I passed them, these were adults, stuck there. And I said, at least you guys are eating. And so they said, yeah, we have a warm place to be and food. So there was no motivation to get out of juvie because my kids had nothing to eat. So at the end, when we went through all this, all of us talked about how we were in survival mode, even though this wasn't actually our life. I never once thought to team up with the family next to me who were 3 teenagers that did not have parents. We should have pooled our resources, moved in together. We probably would have made it through the month. I didn't have time to think about that. And then I got angry because the people that said, well, we can give you $10, but that's all we can, because they're trying to make their grant money last, and I'm so needy, I found myself getting angry at them. It was really an eye-opener. I would encourage, if anybody, if this is offered again, to do it, because this is exactly what Mojave is trying to help families do. When I talk about the whole family approach, is to get people to move beyond survival. So if you don't have food and housing, nothing else matters in your life because you're so consumed with that. You can't think beyond that. And so the whole family approach with Mojave is, to provide housing and food. And then you can move on to try find employment, and then, to savings and planning ahead and all that stuff. Yeah. Anyway, it was one of the most worthwhile things I've done, even just as a person. It just totally changed some of my thinking.
How long was it to go into all those details?
It was about 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours?
Yeah, but they've done it in churches, they've done it in schools, they've done it at community centers. I'm gonna suggest at the next Mojave meeting that we bring it back to Park Rapids and do another one somewhere.
It would be interesting.
And so, one of the, afterwards, you know, where you were going through this, one of the it was Sue at, Action Park Rapids talked about how Rotary, does the backpack program. And, you know, I mean, when you think about kids not having food over the weekend, the only thing they're eating is what is in the backpack provided for them. Yeah. That's all I have.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I got a couple things. Northwest Emergency Communication Board, a nice presentation on Next Gen 911. If you're not familiar with that, the original 911, if you called from your landline, they immediately knew where you were at, identified the address, you know, probably even more information than that. They had quite a bit of information immediately. But now 85% of phone calls to 911 are being made on these. And while they may be able to get coordinates, that doesn't mean anything without looking at a map, and all that takes time. So, and the cell companies haven't been real forthcoming on allowing other data to be pushed with it, that the next step is to make sure when you call on this, that a location comes up on the map immediately where you're at. A lot of people call on these now, and 911 answers, and the first questions are, where are you located? Few basic questions, and a lot of people go, well, you already know that. Well, not really, they don't. And a lot of information could be, well, every county's doing GIS stuff right now to overlay the data on a map, so that's part of the beginning process of this and getting that data uploaded, but it's much deeper than that even. There could be videos pushed along the data pipe to the dispatch center. We all know that a picture says 1,000 words. An example they used is, what if there's a traffic accident and a rollover? What kind of services need to be dispatched right away? Well, it depends on where that rollover is. Is the car upside down in the middle of the road? Is it in the ditch? You know, are there people injured? A simple picture tells a lot more information in a more rapid manner than having to have a conversation all the time. So you can see some benefit to some of that stuff too. Or let's say you need to be giving CPR and you've never given CPR. I guess it's quite a process, very difficult to explain verbally over the phone to someone how to do it, versus somebody could be sitting with a camera and you could be watching them give CPR, telling them and instructing them, oh, no, that's not quite right, or so a lot of positives with it, but there's a lot of data collection to do and a lot of uploading to do and infrastructure work to do, but it has to happen only because of this. This is the driver that's making that happen. So one of the big asks that the presenter had was, we need to get IT involved, because every step along the way here all has to do with IT. And out of all the commissioners and all the RAC members in the room, I think there were 2 hands that went up that had IT experience. So the ask is for each county to go back and see if we can find somebody in our IT department that would like to engage in this and be involved. And of course, they'll reach out to, was it Minnesota IT professionals too, through
Yep,
AMC.
county IT
They're gonna
leadership.
reach out to that group too. But every step along the way, we really need IT sitting at the table when they're strategizing and planning how this is gonna work. So I plan on reaching out to Fred or one of the guys. I know Scott has reached out to a couple of the guys in IT to see if they'd attend a couple meetings with us and see if that's something that interests them in being involved in.
So, Dave, just a question, so if I came upon an accident somewhere and I called 911, but I didn't know where I was, other than, well, I'm on 34, they could pull it up, but it would just take them a little bit.
Yes, and then, that we talked about there lies the value of local dispatch too. Because you might be able to describe something in the surroundings and the local dispatch is gonna know that. Or the local, officer heading to the scene or on the call is going to know that. Where if this all gets centrally located in one location, you might have people working dispatch that have no idea about the local area. Oh, go by the Johnson farm, just past the Johnson farm. That doesn't mean anybody to someone who's not local, so, yeah, there's other ways to do it, and then, of course, you can triangulate too, but that probably takes time. It's not a simple process. But that's where this would be really handy, if they get this pushed along far enough that you make that phone call, they're gonna know where you're at. You make the call from your home, your address is gonna pop up and give directions to the deputy how to get there. So, it's actually kind of exciting at all the information that can be conveyed, but it takes some work to get there though. The other item I had is extension service. We did receive another application for a committee member from my district, so I think we'll wait till maybe the middle of June and then look through what we have, because I did reach out to 3 or 4 other people.
Good.
Make sure they have a chance to apply if they're interested. At least we'll have one of those positions filled in hopefully by July. That's what I have.
Okay, thank you. Meetings to note?
Did anybody go to the Township Association?
Oh, yeah,
last
I
night?
went to it.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything happen there?
Sharon Natural
Oh, yeah.
gave a presentation on COLA, which was interesting. I got asked a few questions, but I think one of them was from the guy who asked you about the land use thing, but I think he was just trying to make a,
I hope your answer was more.
I can tell you about it after the meeting.
Informative
Yeah.
after mine.
Yeah. That's about it. Oh, yeah, meetings to note. We have the department head meeting.
Yes.
That's
Be on the
at
30th, the last Tuesday,
Last
not
Tuesday.
next week.
All right, whose turn?
I believe it's Char's turn.
Is it my turn on the 30th? Okay.
Okay.
And then MRC is on Monday?
22nd.
Yeah,
I
so
think.
next
Yeah.
Monday, yep.
22nd, yep. I'll be at that.
That's a June, I have written down, that's a Zoom one.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I've
Yeah,
got a
they-
question on that. Can I join that too? I mean, we would
We
have.
can all join, we just.
Okay.
MRC is
but
open, yeah.
Tom
Okay.
votes.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I went online to join a couple of them, and you and David were already there. Plus, I was at my regular job with my phone and my earplugs in and trying to do 2 or 3 different things at the same time, so I just bowed out. But yeah, they're informative.
MRC, AMC are not open meeting law violation because they're educational in nature
Okay,
and they're
perfect.
supporting your organizations.
Good,
So-
good deal.
And if Tom's not there, whoever's on, I have to pick somebody
Yeah.
designated as
Yeah,
the person who would vote.
yeah, I think we did that once
Yeah.
earlier. so.
Yeah, I'm on
And
vacation.
currently, we don't have an alternate for Prime West, so if anyone wants to Zoom that, and just listen in, just let me know and I can get you the info. It's the first Thursday of the month.
Okay, I would like to take at least a 5-minute recess prior to the closed session, if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah, and do we want to make a motion to, we can take a recess and come back and then make a
Recess
motion
and
to
then come back?
close. Yep.
Okay, all right, thanks.
David, when you talked about by the Johnson farm or whatever, stuff
Yeah,
like that. Well, I remember that brought to mind when I had to I read all 100-plus year minutes for Schoolcraft Township, because we were trying to find out when this road became
Oh,
a
sure,
township road, and it actually never did, but the same thing, by so-and-so's farm or or so-and-so here and that, and it's like, well, where are these people, you know, so now I go to old maps and find, you know, their names and that, and think,
Yep.
okay, this is the road they're talking about, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And your goal is to get whatever services are needed as rapidly as you can there. You know, so you can see where this is really complicated.
When I got
Wholesale change has to be made.
when I called 911 after I got rear-ended, it was maybe it was a couple minutes, you know, I mean, you get hit and you're spinning around, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm in the middle of the road here, I'm gonna pull over here, and then it was like, okay, I think I'm okay, but then I called 911 and she, you know, I told her I was reporting an accident, and then she said, was it on Bemidji and Ann Street, or whatever it was, and I said, yes, and she said, okay, we're aware of it. So I'm guessing somebody else had already
Somebody else
called
must be,
before
yeah.
me, but,
Yeah, likely, is what it is.
I know I think about that on snowmobile trails,
Mm-hmm.
where they've got, I'm trying to remember what it says, like it's, I had to ask somebody what it meant, because they had numbers and PPs or WP, maybe waypoints or something like that. So I was like, okay, well, what's this about? And it was like, oh, if you call 911, you can tell them where you're at on the trail. And it's like, well, yeah, but if you have an accident between the two signs,
Right, yeah. So at some point in time, you know, that GPS data on the phone has to just go. And be there if you call 911, you know. If you dial 911, your phone should turn on your location services but yeah, it'll take a little bit to get there. It's interesting. And then there's the, you know, hearing impaired too. That's why there's text to 911.
yeah.
And then there's times you call 911, you can't talk. You know, so then having the text or can you send me a video that dispatcher could say, and they could just create a video on their phone and boom, there it is. It could tell a lot of information if you could do that.
That MRC meeting, was that May 22nd or June 22nd?
May 22nd.
Okay.
Yep. No, like I say, I like to have that information, just for myself, if not for no other reason.
That guy thought that hiring of Corey Kimbo isn't that a conflict of interest, his family being in a logging business? So we told him that.
Was he a logger?
No, he's not a logger. I think he's retired from the Stinar Wildlife.
Oh,
But we told him that I've been to several of these timber auctions, and they're all auctioned off, and it's quite fairly done. No conflict of interest. I don't know if that satisfied him, but
you don't think it did satisfy?
I don't know if it did.
No.
'Cause I
Well,
think-
sometimes it's just nice to be asked questions.
yeah,
You know, it shows the public is at least
yeah.
somewhat aware of what's going on.
One guy asked me something about the, to resume the meeting? All right, then we need to close.
I'll move to close.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Opposed? None.